my name is Leslie and I'm the mother of two children who are now 33 and 27 who never went to school. And I started, like most home educators, I think started because I saw my under 5, they didn't need any walking lessons at 9:30, or they learned these huge skills by themselves. They learn to walk, they learn to talk. They go from a little tiny nothing into a great big walking child in all on their own. And also my son taught himself to read. So I thought, well, I'll just give it a go. Somebody gave me John Holt's Teach Your Own, and I read this and it was revolutionary. So he taught himself to read, and John Holt talks about this, about people doing for themselves, and I couldn't believe it. So I thought I'll give it a year, just try out of school. And if the first year of school, basically you learn to read, and so he already does that, so it won't be a disaster. So we started like many people, and I bought all the textbooks of, his age group and all the subjects, and I sit down because I know what education is. You sit at a table and you have books and subjects, and then you work for an hour in each subject, and this is the model I have, most of us have. Very quickly realized that this model was not appropriate if you're 1-to-1 or 1-to-3, because, for example, there were some worms in a textbook, and the worms were like this, like an S, and they have faces on them. And so there's 3 worms plus 2 worms equals, so we're doing maths. And my son said to me, do worms have faces? Because he's looking at this picture. And I thought, I don't know, let's go and see. So we went in the garden and we started to dig up some worms, and we found the worms, and we can't tell which end of the worm is a head and which is a tail. It just looks the same. So I think, what do we do with this creature, So then we went to the library, we started to look for worms. We saw there's all different kinds of worms, they do different things, and found out if you want to tell the head, you get a little bit of vinegar and you put on one end, and the end that retracts, that's the head of the worm. So we had this fantastic sort of project about worms, and we hadn't done any maths, and we hadn't done any textbooks. And I quickly realized we don't need to do this structured stuff. That's basically, if you've got 30 people in a room at once, that you have to keep quiet and you have to bring them all at the same. This is for the school system. This is not about education. This is about taking care of a lot of people at one time and keeping them busy and safe, which is what school needs to do. So we very quickly dropped these textbooks. We didn't do that anymore. And we just started to live life and do projects, and things come up. So my son was very interested in gorillas, and we went every day to the zoo and we watched the gorillas and we draw the gorillas and we get to know the zookeepers, and then we got to know the trouble that the gorillas are in the mountain gorillas, and we did raising money for the gorillas, and we knitted gorilla shirts and we made gorilla posts, and it was like a 2 or 3 year project. And we learned all kinds of things, all kinds of geography and chemistry and sociology and anthropology and all these things that you could put into compartments, but we learned it as one. And this was a much easier way to learn. But one of the things that I thought that home educated children were missing was a time to work together, to do something more not structured, but more focused. They had lots of times for play. So I started a group in my house called a history group, and we picked a topic like gorillas or something, and we just did lots of stuff around it. So the first topic was ancient Greece, and we made the clothes, and we did the food, and one of the children wrote a Greek tragedy about a pet that ran away and a big argument amongst the neighbors, and it was absolutely fantastic, and we put it on in a local church, and all the parents came and we had food. And out of this grew the idea of the Otherwise Club, which is why I'm here to talk about the club, which is a community center for home educators. And at that club there are these history groups still. We've now been running for nearly 24 years. And it's the same thing. We pick a topic that we all want to do. So last year we were looking at the French Revolution, but they're very non-academic topics. And I usually present it. And so to someone outside, it looks a little bit like school, because I am the person in the front who knows, and they sit and we do something. So we do food again, and we did a lot about buildings, we did a lot about revolution and what it means to, grassroots organizing. We had a group came in who are squatting some land in London, and they talked to the kids about how you can change the law and so on. But there's very, very important difference at the Otherwise Club. The first difference is nobody has to come. So it's not in any way a prison. They choose to come there. And the second difference is if they come, they don't have to do what I say, or what anybody says. So they can choose to just opt out. And so it's about, most people want to learn, they want to do stuff, they want to be in the world. There's all kinds of interesting things. And there's another important difference is that we don't have any, there's no idea of success at the end of this. The project has been successful if the people doing it have enjoyed it and think of afterwards if that was good. They don't have to have a test on the French Revolution. They don't have to know any particular aspect of it. They just have an idea that learning or being together is good. And that's. So I'm here to talk about that. And also there's another, aside from the history groups, there's also free spaces where parents can come. So it's about supporting each other. And that nothing happens there. It only happens when people make things happen. So it's a space where stuff can happen. It's not that, we say at 9 o'clock this happens, 10 o'clock that happens. And a lot of people have to relearn what that kind of space is, what it is to be self-autonomous and self-determining, because we are so driven by being told what to do in most of our lives. And so people come and they think, this is boring, what do we do here? I'm sitting here for an hour, nothing doing, and you have to say, well, what would you like to do? This is the really hard question. Who are you? And what do you want to do with your life? So for me, home education is about a process of developing that and learning that and spending your first 20 years trying lots of different things, figuring lots of stuff out, and then so that you can say, I'd like to do this for a while, and I can change, but for the next 5 years or whatever, I'm going to try this and see where I go.
What about your kids now?
My kids are interesting because one is a civil servant, very high and very much in the system, and he's very successful and has a very good job. And my other child, my younger child, is an artist and a squatter and a political person, and she lives on her wits, and she does all kinds of interesting stuff. So I have two ends of society, and they're both trying to change society for the better, but in different ways. Yeah. Well, I think, interestingly, home education is more about the parents. The children don't choose home education. And I never was, some people say, I would let my child go to school if they asked. I said, no, I won't let my child go to school, because as an adult, I can see the damage that school does. I have an overview, whereas children are more in the minute, and usually if people say they want to go to school, there's a problem. They haven't got enough friends, or there's something they want to do that they can't. And because this is the big difference in our family, that gets blamed, even for parents. Often if they want to send their children to school, there's a marital troubles, or there's financial troubles, there's some other problem. So I insisted they be home educated. I mean, after a while, of course, when they're teenagers, if they said, but they never did say they wanted to go to school. But it wasn't their choice. It's like saying, did you enjoy growing up? Well, I don't know. I just grew up. I mean, some was good, some was bad, but it was for the parents who have made the conscious choice to home educate. They have done a huge amount of work, a huge amount of change in their own minds to get to this position and to keep doing it. You need to keep coming to wonderful places like this to hear, oh yes, that's right, that's why we do, because it's such a delicate flower that you're holding against so much pressure from outside to say conform. Oh, you're ruining your child, they'll never get a job, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is the thing I love most in the world, am I ruining it by taking this crazy action? So you need a lot of support, continual support. And I actually did a PhD on how home education affects parents, because I feel they're the ones who are continually having to make the choice again and again and again. So when you ask the children, home-educated children, often they just, when you learn to walk, were you pleased? I mean, you just did it. You didn't think anything of it. So it's like that for them. They didn't make the choice to do it. They haven't thought about it and had to wrestle and have sleepless nights when they're thinking, am I mad? So it's the parents, I think, that you have to look for those answers.